Ever notice how children sometimes seem emotionally switched off, even when everything around them seems normal? Or ask why modern kids sometimes seem emotionally distant, even with all the screens and connections around them? The answer may lie in what science calls attachment function, the deeper emotional bonds that shapes a child's capacity for connections, resilience, and self-control. Recent developmental research emphasizes that relationship-based emotional development is more powerful than short-term behavioral fixes. A recent global study looked at early adolescent and found that insecure attachments, whether with parents or peers, were linked to a higher level of anxiety, depression, stress. Crucially, loneliness explained most of this link. In other words, without a secure connection, loneliness drives emotional pain. Another study among out of school adolescents in South Korea showed that strong attachments to parents and to a lesser extent peers help lower the risk of gaming addiction. But this worked mostly by reducing the social stigma. Feeling accepted by close adults help teens avoid needing escape in excessive gaming. That's why attachment matters, not just for discipline, but for emotional survival. But the question is, how can we build a strong and healthy relationship with our kids? Let's dip and dive into this. Welcome to another illuminating episode of Khan Clinics. I'm your host, Dr. Amir Khan, and with me I have Maya Gaylor. And today we're joined by a remarkable developmental psychologist, founder of the Neufeld Institute, and co-author of the best-selling book, Hold On to Your Kids: Why Parents Need to Matter More Than Peers, by Dr. Gordon Neufeld. Dr. Gordon is a clinical psychologist and internationally recognized authority on child development and attachment theory. He is the founder of the Neufeld Institute in Vancouver, Canada, where he teaches courses and develops resources on attachment based approaches to parenting and education. He has 40 years of experience and has worked extensively with children, youth, and families. He's also the pioneer of attachment based developmental theory in practicing parenting and education. Why Children Need to Matter More Than the Peers book, which reshaped global conversations about parenting and the importance of parent child connection. Dr. Gordon, welcome to Khan Clinics.
Thank you, Amir.
Let's start. I'll ask the first question, and this is about Dr. Gordon's book, Hold On to Your Kids. You differentiate between peer attachment and parent attachment. Why is it so important for children to remain attached to adults rather than peers?
Well, the way nature has it is that attachment is meant to be the natural context. It is in all the animal world, the mammal world. Attachment does much of the work. The attachment of the fetus to the host. Uh, One couldn't take care of one's unborn child without that unborn child being attached. Uh, um, we tend to think that once they have their own 2 feet, we can't see that physical attachment. We don't realize how important it is. It turns out to be the most important thing, whether it's in marriage. If you're not attached to your partner, nothing will work. It's the delivery system of care. And when culture is really working well, this is invisible. The context, the natural part is invisible, just as a tree's roots are invisible. Now, we all know enough that a plant and a tree could not exist without being attached to the earth, but we don't see those attachments. But we know enough. We know enough that they're there. Well, unfortunately, in human society, uh, this is the best kept secret, is that it's not what a parent does. It's not the values in a culture, it's the child's attachment to that everything is delivered through the care, the values, and so on. So it really is invisible in our society, and that's why I wrote the book. And Gabor Mate helped me do the writing. But I wrote the book to really bring a consciousness of this, and this is especially critical for immigrants uh, when their culture has preserved this cascading care, this delivery system, this hierarchical nature of attachment, and it's preserved it. And then when you come to North America, uh, it's it's like wanting our children to belong, to be part of the society that they're in, and they want to. And when these ties are broken, nothing works right. And it's where cultures, no matter where they come from, virtually every culture is in better shape than the cultures of North America. But we are some of the most industrious. Our kids look independent, which just camouflages the fact that we've got some of the highest problems. Our children are incredibly troubled, have mental health problems, and very few seem to be tracing it to their roots, is that they've fallen out of cascading care with the adults responsible for them.
Thank you for explaining that, Maya.
How can parents make sense of and navigate frustration in their children by using your traffic circle model?
Well, the understanding is what most needs to work is our attachments, the contact and closeness, the proximity, the love, the belonging. So that's where frustration comes from. If the frustration is huge, if it exists, you know that it is frustration that's stemming from attachments not working, because a child can't take care of their own attachments. None of us can. This is a function of relationship. That's what it means. This is the science of relationship. And people forget that. People think, oh, well, it's just something, a behavior. No, no, it's a relationship. Um, a marriage would be incredibly frustrating if a partner didn't experience, when he looked in the eyes of or her partner, his partner, an invitation to exist in her presence. This is the bottom line of that relationship, is that invitation. Well, so first of all is understanding where attachment comes from, that we're fueling it. Now, frustration is there for a purpose. It's there to solve a situational problem. Primarily, there is when the animating brain senses a threat to togetherness. It's there to be able to change things. But there's so much in our world we can't change, and the only way the animating brain gets it is if there's some sadness about it. And so the traffic circle, the second outlet, is if is the child is meant to go from mad to sad when things don't work, when you can't make things work, up against the reality, can't get the sibling back in the womb from whence it came. And so sadness resolves, discharges whenever we're up against things that we can't. And so grieving is incredibly important, something that's virtually pathologized in North America. And that's one of the shocks of cultures that come here, is almost all cultures preserve that place of sadness. North America believes that everything can be changed, everything can be different. North American parents are afraid of upsetting their children. They don't confront with the futility that is there. And so what happens is North American children, to an alarming degree, even by toddlerhood, aren't moving from mad to sad. They're having tantrums, they're trying to run and control circumstances. So it's very important. Basically, there's only two legitimate outlets for frustration. One is to solve a problem, but if the problem can't be solved, then to feel the futility of that. And that brings some sadness to us. And that's basically what it is. Now, if frustration gets stale, it hasn't been able to either change we haven't been able to change our world, and we haven't been transformed by that. That's deep adaptation, which is grief driven. Then we've got attacking energy in us. And now we have to figure out a way of getting that attacking energy out without hurting anybody. And so we have the tantrums of the toddler. We have all kinds of impulses to attack, including to attack ourselves, of which suicide is one of those derivations. And so when you realize that frustration has work to do, when you realize that, then the parent needs to say, okay, what one of those outlets am I going to encourage or is appropriate here? Do I help the child solve a problem? Do I try and go to the root of that frustration if I can? Do I help them find the sadness when a problem can't be solved? Or do I help him find a legitimate outlet until he grows up enough to have mixed feelings, which will take care of the impulsiveness? And so that's basically the traffic circle of frustration.
Thank you for explaining that, Dr. Neufeld. Dr. Neufeld, I have a follow-up question on how you described attachment and why does it matter? Nature mother has their babies and kids attached to the parents for some reason, but is a time when their growth is happening and their psychological and physiological growth is still dependent on someone else. Why do you make it important that this is required when you are grown up? Or does there has to be a sense of attachment even when you're grown up afterwards, or it doesn't matter?
Oh, it always matters. It's our brains never let go of it. Our brains are literally created by attachment to serve attachment. That's the bottom line. You could be 95, 105. Still, what's more important to you than living is love, is connection. That is more feared. Why we fear death is a loss of connection. In religions that are very powerful in getting the message across that there won't be less connection, there'll be more connection, you don't have that fear of death. And so it's not the death, it's not the lack of life that we fear. In the pandemic, it wasn't the dying that we feared, it was a loss of connection. And that's why the pandemic was the perfect storm, because togetherness becomes the enemy. And so it's always the most important. That's the way our brains are built. Our brains are built to serve attachment. There's no such thing as being less in need. It just changes. The way it's meant to develop is the infant is all about being with, and the toddler is about being like, and then it goes to being part of, belonging, and being loyal to, and then mattering to, and then finally giving one's heart to. And so relationship, by the time attachment develops into relationship, which should be 5 years of age, uh, we can then it can even transcend death. Your mother is your mother, dead or alive. That's the beauty of relationship, is the attachment transcends it. And so again, American culture is not a culture uh, it, that when it buries people, it buries the consciousness of them. In all other cultures, the ancestors play an incredibly important part, is because they're still taking care of you as you remember them, as you acknowledge them, as you do this. And there's a very good reason, because the whole system is based in cascading care. Religion serves that purpose too, which is, again, the cascading care to the ultimate one who takes care is meant to take care of us.
So, if detachment was an issue and our American culture, if we go back 50, 60 years ago, start teaching us now there is a component of detachment, industrialization,
Hmm.
modernization,
Yes.
you think that that has had a negative effect and caused more issues than solving issues. Am I correct
Oh,
to assume that?
absolutely. Absolutely. The,
So the culture
no
wasn't
matter
like
how.
the culture, these incidents, could it have been that the awareness about mental disorders was less 50, 60, or let's say 100 years ago, but it wasn't just industrialization? Could that be an answer to the question and not just detachment
No,
being the sole
because
issue?
the awareness has no awareness of the emotional roots. these awarenesses, we know from science that all of our troubles are rooted in the animating brain or limbic system as it used to be called. They're all rooted there. Yet when you diagnose and become aware, you're still only in symptoms and symptom management. This is the thing of all of these 296 disorders. People forget to read the preamble of this clinical bible of disorders and a doctrine of disorders, which is there's no cure. So we manage the symptoms. Well, this is because we've cut ourselves off from an understanding of the heart, of the root of all of this, is that we are creatures of attachment. We need to be connected. All of the long-term research shows, whether it's Harvard, marriage, loneliness, is that when we lose a connection, we run into trouble. And when we lose a connection, we have powerful, potent emotions. The stress response gets stuck. This is at the root of our trouble. There is
So,
no the knowledge of mental illness is not an enlightenment of the roots of our trouble. It is
but
it
yet,
is simply handing over our children to experts to manage their symptoms.
still, in a lot of cultures, there are still mental issues, even though they're
Of
more
course.
attached in the north. But even though they're more attached in the Northern American culture, even though they have whatever you call some more attachment, more social support, yet the incidence of depression, anxiety has not lessened. How would you
No,
explain
we,
that?
we,
And
we're,
then you staying attached with the
Amir, we're
culture.
not talking about that attachment is a sufficient condition. It's a necessary condition. The condition for emotional well-being is that there's some release from attachment. Somebody has to step up. You can have the children who are most attached, that you can see visibly, are also the most depressed and most in trouble. And the
Sure.
reason for that is because nobody has stepped up to take over to do the work of the attachment. So when our brains are work at attachment, it brings us to the worst case scenario. But there is no such case of not being attached. Uh, you're always attached. It is whether you're attached in a way in which there is a possibility of fulfillment and release. When attachment becomes fragmented, you need to win all the time, be the most important all the time, to be the boss all the time. When it depersonalizes, there's no hope for fulfillment, and so it becomes addictive. People don't understand that all of this stuff around screenplay and sports, this is all depersonalized attachment. It's purely addictive, and so the the wisdom in attachment is knowing that it's not attachment itself, but if you don't have that, there's nothing to build on. But there has to be some release. The brain is all about attachment until it gets rest. When it gets some rest, the brain automatically goes into the play mode. You can see this with a kitten, you can see this with a toddler, you can see it with a young child. And the play mode is, in the new play of science, is absolutely that which is necessary for the unfolding of our human potential. In fact, playfulness is now becoming recognized as the number one indicator of emotional health and well-being, whether it's our cat, or whether it's our aging grandparent, or whether it's our toddler. And the reason for it is because we see the brain where it wants to be, and a luxury of functioning is that it's not desperately looking for the next fix of contact and closeness, of love and belonging, of sameness, and so on. And so if the fetus wasn't attached, there's death. But the fetus has to be attached in a way that the umbilical cord delivers what the fetus needs. And so it's in science we talk about whether it's a necessary, or whether necessary and sufficient condition, or what it is. And the bottom line is attachment is the bottom line, but it has to be the kind of attachment that can bring rest to a child. And you could define a successful marriage that way, is that you can rest in the invitation to exist in your partner's presence, is that there's some sense of mattering, of being liked and of being loved, that you're not constantly having to work at it. And so this is universal across all relationships.
And yeah, as we talk about these attachment styles and the way that we have, progressed, especially in North America due to industrialization, can you tell our listeners who are parents how they can cultivate and preserve these attachment rituals?
Well, the basic attachment rituals are in every culture. One of the most important ones, uh, uh, there's three basically that are key and that are universal across cultures. One is just knowing how to prime attachment. It's embedded in how we say hello, is the greeting ritual of being able to get the eyes, smiles, and nods. It changes from culture to culture, but basically, we're engaging the attachment instincts of the other. But the second most important one is the goodbye rituals. The goodbye rituals in English are both truncated and have lost their meaning because it meant God be with you until we meet again. And what it is you put the focus not on what separates you. Like when you say good night, you don't put the focus on the fact that I'm going to close the door, it's going to be dark, and there's no connection. You put the face to the connection that comes next. I'll see you in the morning. I'll come and check you. I'll be here in a few minutes. I'll see you in my dreams. And this is the answer of all cultures have come up with this goodbye ritual. When facing separation, you put the attention on the connection, what stays the same, the next point of connection. All religions do this. That's why there is an afterlife. You put the focus on the next connection, because we, as human beings, we don't do separation. We don't do death very well. Is it's always the next connection. And so this needs to be there right from the beginning. The third one is matchmaking, is that when you don't have, when your children, you need to farm out your children to be raised. You make sure that you create the attachment that needs to be there so that it will work. We don't do this in our school system and so on. We still have manners in North America, but they're with our friends. We wouldn't think of interacting with them until we first greeted them. If we're going to say goodbye, we always put the focus on our next connection or what stays the same. Uh, we have better attachment manners with our friends than we do with our children. We think that our role is enough, and you should listen to me because I'm your father or I'm your mother, and we get right down to work. And so we've largely lost our attachment manners. If you go to places that have missed the Industrial Revolution, like Bali, for instance, or Provence, for instance, and I'm sure you could think of all kinds of other places. You see places you wouldn't even dream of interacting with somebody until you're first greeted. And you wouldn't dream of leaving anybody without being able to put the focus on the next connection. These are deep embedded rituals in culture. Unfortunately, in North America, we've more lost our culture, and that's why it's so important for immigrants to preserve their culture and find ways of restoring those things that preserve the connections between children, parents, grandparents, and so on, because that cascading care will be the root of their well-being and their mental health.
You emphasize, Dr. Neufeld, quite a bit about why immigrants, when they are migrating or anyone migrates, they have to preserve their culture. And you tie that to attachment and or the fact that they will find more sanity or more security, able to function more as a group or as a clan with the attachment factor in it. With so much industrialization going on, so much migration, so many of things are revolving right. Do you still see that as an important component 50 years, 30, 40, 50 years from now? At,
Absolutely, absolutely. The good thing about when you're uh, when there's cultural decay is that at least you're not burnt at the stake for inventing your own culture. Uh, but families, if they're totally divorced from their cultures and ancestors, and they have no rituals that they're bringing forward, unless they can reinvent those rituals. If you got no ritual to make sure that there's three meals, in your family for the day, or they do it, you have to invent those rituals. Can we invent those rituals? Yes. But if they don't, if you're just going to wait until, somebody says, I need food, it's not going to work, because everything that's important in the delivery of care, including brushing your teeth, has to be ritualized. And so, are rituals and customs absolutely essential? Yes, they're absolutely essential. If you have a working culture, can you borrow from that culture? Absolutely. If you've lost your culture, if you're at a place in which industrialization puts the dollar or success as more important than ritual, then the wise parent, the wise family, the wise grandparents need to reinvent customs and rituals to be able to do this. If you don't, you're not going to be able to preserve your family, keep it together.
but you're going to have a new culture and you're going to adapt to the new culture and adopt it. My question follow up to that is that yes, it's important to preserve culture. Is there scientific evidence showing that you got to? Is there any evidence scientifically showing that preserving the culture has an advantage for immigrants who are coming to a new place?
Yes, there is, but it's indirect. It's indirect. The problem is in the science of relationship. There's yet been no way to define relationship. And so you can't do direct research on it. It becomes a theoretical research where you join the dots to where there's no dissonance, or you put the puzzle pieces together. And so you have you have uh, to be able to do that. The Their indirect evidence, of course, is that when children have become alienated from their families and culture of origin, the gang formation is incredible in those. They replace those in terms of gangs. Also, the uh, that would be one. There's indirect evidence of peer orientation. Of course, you adopt the values and the culture of the peers, but you really have got to put the pieces together. You can't go, is there a study that does this? No, it doesn't work that way. You take the dots that are generated by studies and you have to assemble them to see if the picture stands across.
Dr. Neufeld, could you walk us through the 6 stages of attachment and explain why understanding them matters for everyday parenting?
Well, we don't have to understand how a car works if it works. The problem is when it doesn't work, we either need to understand it or find somebody who does. When we look at at what the brain is trying to do, the animating brain, it's got a problem. Is how to be able to help the child hold on when apart, because threats to togetherness absolutely are, that's the very essence of stress. And so that's when you put these pieces together, you find out by the first birthday, by when a child enters the second year, that it's that they feel close to whomever they feel the same as. And so there's a preoccupation. But what does sameness do? It allows you to sustain more separation, not to be with those that you're attached to. But this just unfolds until you see in the 3-year-old uh, uh, needing to be part of, just absolutely glowing when you call them my boy or my girl or my grandson. They need to be part of something, and they're loyal to. They always take the side of those that they're attached to. Again, we're just at the beginning here, as by the time you get to the 4th year, it's all about mattering. The brain gets it that mommy and daddy hold close that which they hold dear, so you want to matter to it. If everything goes well and there's not too much separation, the problem is If it's not safe to attach deeply, the brain retreats into all about sameness, and that encourages tribalization, racism, nationalism. That's where we see it today. Polarized politics. It's all about sameness and differences. And unfortunately, that's where cultures find themselves when they're not running in deep attachments. If you run into deep attachment, it doesn't matter whether you're black or white. That's not part of your identity. The attachment trumps those kinds of things. But tribalization happens when there's not deep enough attachments. The child should be giving his heart to there should be emotional intimacy by the time the child is 5. And that sets the stage for the ultimate intimacy, which is the psychological intimacy where you share your heart with those that you're attached to. That prepares the way for the sexualization. Why do parents need to know that? Because if they knew that, that they would know the ways for being able to help the child hold on when apart. We face so much separation in our society today. So much separation, so many threats to togetherness. It's very important for parents, and hence the title of my book, to know how to step up to hold on to their kids, how to be able to do the work of attachment so the child can let go, so the brain can get on with its work of the child becoming their own person. But then we've got to do that work of attachment, and so love isn't just an accident. It's a human solution. To be able to give your heart to somebody, to feel the emotional closeness, is absolutely necessary. It's a way that you can hold somebody close, even if you're not the same as them, even if you're not with them all the time, even if you're not the most important in them, because there's other, they have babies, there's others that are most important. So it becomes absolutely essential in today's broken world. Again, if you have intact cultures, you don't need to know this. Certainly, I took a mini sabbatical in Bali, some of the most open, healthy children you'd ever seen, and that was observed even 40 years ago. They wouldn't know any of this, nor do they need to know any of it. You need to know it as you have to deal with industrialization, with immigration, with loss of culture, and with materialism, which is what North America is all about. It's about the dollar, not about relationships.
A follow-up question, and it's going to be probably my last question. I, I, I love the statement where you've emphasized about attachment. I love the part when you say, okay, attachment brings a lot of good qualities. I still am a little not clear about why is it that the culture needs to come in? Why don't we adapt? And a follow-up of that is that why don't we look at it from developing a new culture? Why isn't that important? And if we're bringing in an old culture that may not fit into the new culture, wouldn't that can create conflicts? And is it not true that if we are not looking at the newer options or developing this new culture, it does bring in narrow mindedness, and it also has, it sort of curbs your abstract thinking of developing something new. So, would the right answer be you have to have a balance of what cultural things you're attached to, and then also make sure that you have room to develop this new culture or give opportunity to develop something there that may also foster attachment in an indirect way? Hence, to counter a little bit of the criticism against North America, or the industrialization that is happening, that we have to develop a new culture. It is inevitable that it's going to come about. We can't stop one, and yet we're trying to bring in a culture that doesn't fit. What would you say to that?
Well, some of it is true and just simply happens. If there's healthy development, you move from an either or to a this and. You always do, and so uh, in Canada, you're always something. You're not because we're not American, and you're always something. You're Greek Canadian, you're Italian Canadian, you're German Canadian, you're so on and so on. But the idea there is is that your host country, the ones that have been based in terms of success, are the poorest at terms of cultural transmission. And And so you need cultural, you need to bring something. You need to bring, just like to benefit from school, you need to bring things from home. You can't just go to school and benefit from it. Well, when you go to do an engine of material success, you've got to bring something to this. And that what you bring is from family. And family is about culture. Family is about tradition. Can you make up your own? Absolutely. But you would have to know that you needed to do so. But the answer, and when you say either or, no, it's about this and the the you can you can be part you can be uh, you can participate in something without losing very important aspects of your own identity. It's not an either or thing, and that should be there by the time a child is 6 or 7 years of age. Part of me this and part of me that, and they can feel that it's not an either or situation. If it is, then that's where tribalization, polarization, that's where the dark energy of attachment becomes very destructive.
Yeah, last question. What are the most common misunderstandings about dependency in child development? And how should we rethink independence and attachment?
When you understand attachment as relational, you realize that relational needs are dependency needs by definition, and that the parent is really the best bet, or the grandparent or whoever is in that line of cascading care, to be the answer to their need to matter, for love, for sameness, for belonging. These are dependency needs that never go away. The Japanese culture understands those absolutely intuitively. One of the oldest cultures in the world, which understands, and they take great pride in their dependence, try to make themselves sweet so that dependence can be accommodated, respected, understood. The love affair that that Western civilization has had with independence, it has completely camouflaged the reality of our dependence. These are relational needs. We can't be the answer to relational needs. You're not the answer to somebody inviting you to exist in their presence. That's a relational need. That need always stays with us. It never goes away. So unfortunately, we don't have proper language anymore. We've confused self-reliance with independence. We've confused. We do not understand how dependent we really are, and how dependent. Marriage partners are on each other. In fact, it creates the relationship. Marriage is about attachment, taking turns taking care of each other, and they need to depend upon each other to do so. So it's not about not needing each other. It is about finding that dance. And if that's true as adults in relationship with each other, how much more true with our children and adolescents? Is that instead of inviting dependence, knowing that that becoming viable as a separate being will be automatic if their dependency needs are sufficiently met, and they can rest in that. We don't have to be worried about that. There's a beautiful little piece of research that is very, it's a bit reductionistic, but it proves a point. They take parents who are whose parenting philosophy is has to do with independence. So to a toddler, it would be, uh, I must not do anything for you that you could or should do for yourself, or I'll interfere with you becoming truly independent. And I don't want to encourage dependence. And so then you take the kind of parent who invites that dependence. Here, let me pick you up. I know you can walk on your 2 feet, but of course I'd like you to pick up. And then they study the children. And it's so paradoxical. The parents who are preoccupied with fostering independence have children who are overly dependent and who may transfer their dependence to others. But they are obsessed with being picked up. And the parents who are generous in inviting dependence, even at that level, at a toddler, have toddlers who are preoccupied with walking on their own 2 feet. So, like much of life, it's paradoxical. But what we should be about inviting the dependence of our partners, our friends, and especially our children, and let nature take care of fostering the independence that is required to live in this world. And we've taken a wrong turn in Western civilization, a dreadful wrong turn. And it started in the UK and England with this idea that you must never do anything for a child that they could or should do for themselves, and that's the way you foster independence.
Interesting. Dr. Gordon, thank you so much for your time. Um, Final
My
message for
pleasure.
our audience, please.
Well, it's final message is it's not, we're busy asking questions, what do you do? And that's not where the answer is. It's who we are to our children. And their attachments to us make us who we are. And that's true in teaching as well. It's who you are to your child that matters most. And so that's again why the reason is to make it easy for them to attach to us deeply, fully, and to for us to do the attachment work. They must not work at love. That must come from us, that invitation, that love, that mattering, so that they are not the ones working at it. If there's any key to success, effectiveness and fruitfulness in parenting, that would be it.
Dr. Gordon, thank you for showing us that when we lead with attachment, everything else falls into place. It's not just about control,
Yes,
it's about the connection. So thank you for being with us today. Really, truly appreciate it.
my pleasure.